Alright, so in this video I want to talk about reflections. So there's a few types of reflections in games. We have screen space reflections and we have um, like sphere reflections or captured reflections. Okay, so let's start out by either adding a post-process volume. So to add a post-process volume, we'll type in post, drag in a volume here, and I'll typically move this volume out of my way underneath the ground. But what you would need to do is you would need to scale this up so that it encompasses your whole level. Okay, but instead of doing that, if we just want one kind of post-process volume to rule them all we need to do is come over here into the details panel, and I'm going to type in infinite or INF, and I'm going to check on infinite extent unbound. Okay, this means that this volume no longer is bound by the physical volume, rather it encompasses infinity. So again, I can move this out of my way. I can do whatever I want. Now I've already got one in here, so I'm just going to delete the one that I just created, and I'm going to type in post in my world outliner. I'll select my post process volume, and you'll see that infinite extent is already checked on. So if we go back to our post process volume, the first thing I want to do is disable my screen space reflections. Okay, so I'm going to type in screen, and we'll take the intensity, I'm going to turn it down to 0. So you might see that something kind of happened, and I'll explain this in a minute. So every scene by default has a post-process, has these post-process effects assigned to it. So it's not like by adding this post-process volume I'm turning anything on or off. These things are kind of already there. Adding the post-process volume gives me the ability to edit them or modify them. Okay, so basically by default this screen space reflection is turned on, and I need to get access to it to turn it off. Okay, the next thing I've got are reflection captures. So if I type in ref, we'll see that I have a few of these sphere reflection captures. So I'm going to delete those. Now I have kind of no reflections in my scene anymore. Let me just take this and I'll delete that. So even if, let's see, if I were to make a new material, call it chrome, we'll plug in white for the base color, one for metallic, one into specular, and 0 into roughness. I should have this chrome sphere here. Okay, so let's save that, and I'll assign this to my floor. One other thing. So I have what's called a planar reflection. I'll delete that. So now I've got this chrome. I can add this chrome to anything, and we aren't going to see any chrome, even though our material in the material editor looks great. It's reflective and shiny. If I start to raise up that roughness, it'll start to diffuse that reflection. Here we've got like a brushed metal. Let's not save that though. Let's keep this complete chrome. Okay, so what's happening now is, yeah, we've got chrome. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so I've got this chrome and it's not working because none of my reflections aren't set up now. So if I go to reflections, I will just have black. Okay, I've got no reflections. So how do we get reflections? So again, I'm going to go and select my post-process volume, and I'm going to check back on in my screen space reflections. Okay, and this is kind of like what you'll have by default. So screen space reflections is a technique where they use what's rendered on the screen as your reflection. Okay, so let's talk about this. Again, my floor is completely chrome, and the reflections look great. They look, crystal clear. But here's what happens. So as I pan the camera around, and you'll kind of see on the lower left and lower right, there's like this kind of vignette or this haze, okay? Because things are kind of not available for a screen space reflection, okay? If I keep the camera completely horizontally and vertically lined up right here, we'll see that is very minimized. As I start to tilt down though, we'll see that we get that vignetting in the lower left and right. And if I tilt up, well, I don't have anything up there. So if I throw a chrome thing on my roof, we'll see kind of the same thing happening on the ceiling. Okay? But if I keep it kind of perfectly aligned to a one-point perspective with that back wall, everything looks great. But this isn't, that's not how things are always going to be. We're going to be looking around. So as I start to pan down, we'll see that reflection, that screen space reflection, disappears. And if we look at the numbers on the back wall there, you'll see that as they go out of view on the top, they go out of view in my reflection. Okay, because again, it's using what's available in the screen space or what's being rendered on the screen, and it's using that as its reflection. Okay, so as I look down on the floor, there's nothing there, so no reflection. As I look up, we get some reflections. Okay, so that's screen space reflections, and that's again on by default. We need to, we can turn this off by lowering that intensity. All right, so next, if I type in ref, we have a sphere reflection capture. Okay, so if I bring in a sphere reflection capture, drop this thing here in my scene, we'll see that we've got reflections. Now for my scene, I have increased the resolution of my screen reflection captures. Let me go ahead and show you how to do that. So if I go to Edit, Project Settings, and I'm going to type in resolution, and we have this reflection capture resolution. So I've set mine to 1024. Default, I believe they're at 128. So I'll change this, and we'll kind of look and see how this happens. So when I change this to 128, there you go. There's our low res reflections. Okay. As I start to type this or raise this value up, 256. We'll do 512. All the way up to, I'll do like 1024. Whoops. There we go, 1024. We have super crisp, clean sphere reflections. Okay. I'll lower this though. Let's do something like 256 because I think we want to be able to differentiate the reflection there, and it helps having it be a bit blurry. Okay. So what's a sphere reflection capture? Okay, well, a sphere reflection capture is basically it's like a camera in a point in space where it takes a 360 degree kind of spherical image, and it's mapped back onto a sphere. Okay, so if I take this sphere reflection capture and I lower it down or start to scale it down, this is the sphere that it is kind of being projected on, and you can kind of see how this acts. As I raise and lower it, it changes its kind of location. And again, as I scale it up and down, kind of changes its scale, right? So if I have a really shiny floor and I want the reflection to line up and match here, well, I'm going to need a sphere reflection capture that's kind of, right in front of this door, that's scaled up so that it looks correct with this door. If I scale it up too high, it's going to look incorrect. If I scale it down too low, I could like bring this down and bring it right in front here. But that's just too low and too small. So again, I'm going to scale it up to be the correct resolution, and I kind of want to, I'll pull it out here maybe a little bit. Also, I'm going to kind of, you're going to want to place these kind of at the eye of the character. So if I want this door, scale it up a little bit more, maybe something like that. Okay, now it's looking quite rounded, but if I had a really reflective panel on the floor right in front of the door, I'm going to need kind of a smaller, more localized reflection capture placed there. So next you'll notice that I've got nothing back here. And let me go ahead and just throw this chrome onto a few of my other floors here. There we go. All right, so my other floors don't have any reflections on them. It's just wherever this one sphere reflection is. So we need to kind of stack these. So what I'm going to do is duplicate another one. Okay, and I could start to kind of duplicate these and place a bunch, line them up. If they are not updating, you can hit this capture scene. Oh, I'm sorry. There should be an update. Let me just go ahead and go up to here. If I click on the arrow next to build, I can scroll down and hit build reflection captures. That will recapture them. I thought there was a button. I don't know. I'm missing it right now. But so yeah, so we've got these two now, and they're kind of lined up somewhat, and they blend quite well. Right now it doesn't look like they blend all that well, but in reality we're not going to have a perfectly chrome floor, and this would not be the solution for something like a perfectly reflective floor. Okay, if my chrome ball here had a value of maybe 0.4, yeah, something like this, this would probably be perfect or good enough. Yeah, we wouldn't even really see that. So let me do like 0.25, right? And that's the thing on things that aren't that reflective or that shiny. Here you go, like this, right? Yeah, this looks good enough. There's reflections there. There's that reflection of this light. Here we can see that we've got the lights and the door there. Like everything looks, pretty believable. We look on the floor. We've got the reflections of the glowing light sources up there, and everything seems to be okay and fine. All right. So on surfaces like this, that can be plenty. So I'm going to set that back to 0 so we have that pure reflection. And what I'm going to do next is this. I'm not going to go and place these small ones everywhere, but what we can do is we can grab some larger ones, and I'll scale this one up so it's probably encompassing this whole kind of section, right? So we've got it encompassing this room. This is my door here, and this was that little side room off to the side. And we've got the corner over here, right? So if I grab that reflection, here's that reflection, and it's kind of grabbing all of that stuff. Now I could even kind of place this in the center of like this room, and maybe just kind of isolate it to this section, and this will be good enough. Okay, so again, if I'm looking at this And let me go ahead and rebuild, just make sure these are updated. Okay, yeah, so there's like some kind of a reflection in here. It's not the greatest. It doesn't line up with a lot of things, but again, it doesn't necessarily need to. As I move into here closer to the door, that reflection blends, and we get this more specific and more localized blend here. Okay, so if I had things that are very, very reflective, then we are going to want to have smaller reflection captures. So again, let's take like this guy, let's put him kind of in the light, let's assign the chrome to him. Okay, and then if I take this palette and I move this palette right in front, well, we don't see that palette right in front of this pure chrome thing because of the reflection captures. One, this mesh is going to kind of go to its nearest reflection capture and use this as its reflection. So what I want to do for this is I would want to pull another one. Let's get it kind of right here. And if I really needed the viewer to believe that there was this green palette thing right in front, could scale this guy up. Let's really put the reflection in between this thing so it sees that green palette there. And I'll hit update. And there we go. Okay, but again, there's this smaller sphere reflection in there, and it's blending between this medium-sized reflection capture here, and then finally with this larger reflection capture here. So you'll typically have a reflection capture kind of for a room. And then as you kind of get down to these smaller, more localized, specific things, you'll need smaller, more localized reflection captures. So I'm going to look up the documentation. I'm under the reflection environment documentation on Unreal's documentation, and I'm scrolling down for an image that's got kind of a top-down view of a room. And this wasn't it. Let me type reflection. Let's do reflection environment. I think that's what I was just on. Let's go back and let's go to reflections. This, I believe, is it, but I don't want to. There we go. Okay, so if you download the reflections demo scene from the Learn tab on the Unreal Marketplace or the Unreal launcher, Epic Games launcher, you've got this room, and it's kind of, here's a top down, okay, and we've got the room layout, so we've got the walls in black here. We've got these little mirrored chrome trash cans, and then we have these rectangles here, here, and here that are these posters, right? So if you can see, here's a poster, and the poster has a glossy plastic front on it. Here is the garbage can here, and it's got kind of a brushed look to it, and then the floor is wet. Okay, so the way that they've handled the sphere reflections is they have the red one is a large one that takes up this whole area, right? Then you've got the blue ones, which is a more localized to these to kind of a room, and then we've got the green, which are the really small ones that need to be right in front of those very reflective things. Okay, so again, it's kind of like what we have. We have one large one. If I go to my top-down view here, we've got the one large one. Then we have this medium size. This is more localized so that it lines up with the with the door here, and then lastly this specific smaller reflection so that we have this more believable reflections in the chrome trash can here. Okay, and again, if I take this, and I'm just going to create a material instance. Let me convert this to a parameter, call it roughness. Actually, let me set its max to 1, hit apply, because if I need to change this stuff on the fly, I want to be able to do so. So let me just reapply this to all my floors. There we go. Okay, so now I can quickly open up this material instance, and I can change the roughness. So if we want to come over here now, and I start to raise up my roughness, there you go. Okay, so again, on a scene that doesn't have a chrome, a perfect mirror floor, this kind of solution is fine. All right, so I'm gonna delete these sphere reflection captures. And we're going to go to the next type, was a box reflection capture. So we'll set this back to 0. And here's my box reflection capture. So the box reflection capture is great for these square rooms. As you can see, it well, it almost lines up everything perfectly. Let me kind of line this up with this room. Okay, so let me get this box kind of around here, and we'll line it up like so. Let me take a look at the side view here. All right, something like this. Let me go ahead and build reflection captures. And here we go. I mean, if we look at this end where this box, that box reflection capture cuts off, it's just showing that this back wall there, but it kind of stops. So again, it's great for square rooms. Okay, and this actually works better for this type of room, but these don't blend as nicely as the other ones. Okay, because we can see this it doesn't blend. It's just this kind of plane, right, where these two blend together. I'll try to pull this in so we can kind of see this happening. Right, so even if I were to kind of place this one in there, there's like this wall of reflection here. So maybe I was going to see about trying to fix that blend with the sphere reflection. Maybe you could do something like that. Again, I'm going to hit build reflection captures. And we've got something there. Something like that could work. But yeah, that's a box reflection capture. Okay, so they've got their different use cases. Lastly, for the reflection captures, we're going to go over the planar. So the planar reflection capture is great for flat surfaces like the floor or a mirror on a wall. Okay. In order to add the planar reflection capture, though, first we need to go to Edit, Project Settings. In here, I'm going to search for Clip, C-L-I-P, and we have to check on this Support Global Clip Plane for Planar Reflections checkbox, which you can see mine is checked on. If you don't have this on, when you drag your planar reflection capture in, it's going to warn you that you need to check that on, and it's also going to tell you that you have to restart your editor. So save up and restart. So when I bring this planar reflection capture in, it's going to snap kind of right to the floor, and then we'll see this kind of weird flickering thing going on. So this is the plane of the planar reflection. If I bring this up, there it is. You kind of want to just drag it on because it'll snap to the floor. So don't try to move it around. If you kind of get it off, just delete it and, bring it back in like there. But the planar reflection captures the floor as perfectly as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and rebuild the reflections just so we... Okay, so here you'll see some weird flickering, and here where the capture doesn't continue, we don't have reflections. So I'm going to go on my top down, and I'm going to want to make sure that this plane encompasses everything there. So I could scale it so it fits more tightly, and we really we don't want to waste. We want to kind of use just as much as we need to, because if we're rendering a lot more, this will be just kind of based on performance. So we want to use kind of as little as most efficiently as possible. All right, so yeah, the flickering is going to drive you crazy. So what you can do once you've got it placed on that plane is you can uncheck Show Preview Plane. So we'll no longer see that preview plane, but we'll see the reflection here. All right, so this gives pretty great planar reflections, and this is yeah, really great. And even if we look down, it's not a screen space reflection, it's a reflection capture, but this is kind of the most costly reflection capture. Okay. Yeah, so that's the planar reflection. All right, and kind of lastly, we use a combination of all of these. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my previous scene. Okay, and I'll hit G, and you can see here that this is my this is a sphere reflection capture. Okay, so I've got some sphere reflection captures. I've got a planar reflection capture as well. All right. I don't have any box reflection captures, but in my post process volume, I have the screen space reflections. So what we're doing, and if I go to my reflections view, we've got kind of all of these reflections kind of working together, okay, to give us kind of the best, most optimized reflections possible. So the reason that I've got the planar reflection on the floor isn't necessarily because I need them, because if I take this planar reflection and I delete it, we won't really see kind of anything happen there. Let me go ahead and rebuild just to be sure. I couldn't tell if there was a switch there or not, but let's go to reflections, and yeah, I think we can see now that's the screen space. There's a screen space, a reflection fading in and out, and going back to the sphere reflection captures. So the reason for the planar, if I grab this planar and bring it in, that planar kind of overrides the other guys there. And as always, I'm just going to hit Build Reflection Capture. But if I go, and it's not really needed in this scene as it is, but if I go and I start to do some type of vertex blending where I blend some water on here, or I do like a decal, let me find a decal real quick. Let's turn off that preview plane. grab a decal, drag that on, but then in the decal material, let's go back to that like chrome. Alright, so I'm going to make this a deferred decal. We need to set that to translucent, and I'll do translucent. Let's do color and roughness. And we'll that color and roughness. Set that to 1. And we should get this kind of chromy thing. So as soon as I save that and plug that into the material of the decal, let me undo that. What I want to do is I want to grab this, let's grab this alpha, and I want to put that in my chrome. So I want this to be like a puddle. Okay, we'll put that into opacity. That should just mask that out. There we go. Okay, so because of that planar reflection, now this, what was kind of like a chrome puddle, kind of looks correct. If I take that planar reflection and I delete it, we're not going to get the parallax is not going to be lining up properly. We're going to be blending and switching between those different sphere reflection captures and screen space. There's it blending through the screen space, and then the reflection capture. So again, that's where the planar reflection comes in handy. Okay, so that's going to do it for reflections. Just remember, there's kind of two types of reflections. There's screen space reflections, and then there's reflection captures. By default, the screen space reflections is enabled. You need to add a post-process volume to be able to disable it, and then you can also use the different types of reflection captures, such as the box reflection capture. That's great for a square or a box room. The planar reflection capture, which is great for the floors but costs the most. And lastly, the sphere reflection capture, which is the most common and the one that is the cheapest and kind of blends together the best. All right, so again, that's going to do it. And if you have any questions, just let me know, and I will see you in the next one.